Good evening, everyone, and time for Tuesday's thoughts. Hope everybody's keeping warm and doing what they need to do. My name is Delroy Hall, and I'll be doing the broadcast this evening, reflecting on some matters that are experienced by human beings. I'd like to say welcome to you if you're watching online or catch up. This is Tuesday, the 17th of October, 2023. If you're watching a week's after the event, or even months even, welcome and thank you for taking maybe 20-25 minutes if you stay. Really good for you to be here. Just want to check something. Ooh, there we go. Yeah, thank you, sound engineer. Yeah, good to go. Oh, hang on. Yeah, good. Oh, good evening. Yeah, there's our Pepper here and there's Sonia. So we're good to go. So anyone else who's watching, certainly not live, but you're on catch up, just a great welcome to you. Just want to say thank you for taking the time out this evening. So we'll be looking at, thank you again on YouTube, either living with somebody who is stuck in past relationships or dating somebody who is stuck in a past relationship. So that's what we're looking at this evening. But before we get into the session, I just want to continue announcing my workshop that's coming up. Just give you the link so that at least you've got it. In November next month. Here we go. Just stick this here. Okay, and just let this go. It's a workshop on betrayal. So if you are around, you can get it on Eventbrite. Tickets are still available, and it'd be good. It could be 5 hours or thereabouts, and just to explore this whole thing around betrayal. If you've been betrayed at birth, the impact at birth, as a young child, youngster, young adults, and the impact on your relationships. All right, yeah. Good evening, Risen. Good to see you this evening. So please look at the link, and it'd be really good to see you on Saturday, the 11th of November. It's in Walsall, just off the M5, I believe it is. Really, really nice facilities. So it'd be good to see you there. Okay, so we're looking at either living with or dating someone who is stuck in past relationships. Now, the reason why you'd think to yourself, well, if someone is living with somebody, well, surely they would have known beforehand. Not necessarily so. Sometimes some people meet, and within 2 or 3 weeks before they even get to know each other, they move in with each other. And it's there as they start to live on a day-to-day basis, they realize that you're with somebody who's stuck in a past relationship, or what I'm going to call it this evening is relationship trauma. But I want to read a quote by somebody called Tudose. This is what this individual said. If you help your partner learn their lessons by showing what mature love feels like, they will be more open to letting go of the past. But you must also look out for the signs that you may in fact be fighting a losing battle. Sometimes it is just not meant to be. There are some relationships that are where there's a connection between the two. It's a relationship worth fighting for. You stay with it, you stick with it. And even then, sometimes, the other person can go, but at least you can say you're giving it your best shot. And sometimes there's just some relationships, no matter how hard you work at it, it's just not meant to be. And sometimes we stay in things, it's just not meant to be, and causes lots of difficulties. So what I tend to do, I have my own ideas on certain things, but sometimes I see an article, really like it. So then I use some of the ideas, and then I kind of embellish it. I put my own spin on it, my own experience. So in a sense, the person may provide structure, but I add a bit more flesh to it. So there's an article that I really enjoyed reading called Dating Someone with Relationship Trauma, What to Expect and How to Cope. Good evening, Marcia, and anyone else who's watching. Welcome this evening. I've just announced the training that's going on in Walsall on Saturday, the 11th of November. Starts at 10 o'clock. Really good to see some of you there. So this whole thing around being with somebody. Good evening, Jenny, and anyone else who I know who watch each week. You're there with your pad and your pen. That's great. So yeah, just say a huge welcome. Really good to have you this evening or whenever you decide to watch it. So there's a really good article that I saw and I really liked. Dating someone with relationship trauma, what to expect and how to cope. So this is going to be in 2 parts. I'm going to do some part today, and then I'm going to do the second bit next week. Next week might be a recording, but I'll let you know. I'm going to be away next week. Okay, so dating someone with relationship trauma does not mean the end of a relationship, doesn't it? It just means there's a set of unique challenges, but where there's challenges, if we stick with it, there's also opportunities for growth, learning, and understanding. So sometimes being in a very difficult relationship, not that the person is rude or abusive, I'm not talking about that. There's some real difficulties this person has experienced, and you really like the person, they like you, but there's some difficulties, and it's not because you don't connect, but there's just some difficulties that kind of get in the way, but it's worth making the investment in a relationship. So understanding relationship trauma, its causes and effects. Now, relationship trauma, or people stuck in the past, you've got this whole thing about abuse or neglect or abandonment in past relationships. I've certainly over the years, and usually with women, but always, I've met women who have come for counseling. They've been with somebody for 3 or 4 years. This person has never ever taken them out, never ever taken them to their social network. They just go around to the young woman's flat. And quite often it's just for one thing only, and there's no engagement. There's no taking the person out for a meal, taking them out for the pictures. A real kind of relation that goes nowhere. So that can cause people feeling really rejected and neglected, and that can have major impacts on people's relationships for the future. So in terms of relationship trauma, abuse, neglect, abandonment, but also family dynamics. And the other thing, family dynamics is just crazy sometimes. And there's ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, some of the things that children have had, they've experienced it, and then it affects them forming healthy relationships as children, as teenagers, and young adults, and so forth. And also when individuals experience betrayal, or they've been hurt, or poor treatment by someone they've trusted, that's this whole thing. We looked at it some time ago. This whole thing about betrayal is when you have been violated by somebody who you trust, and it cuts really, really deep. So all these things can cause trauma in a person's life. And what it does, it makes an impact on their nervous system. So then it affects future relationships. So then what happens sometimes, they can be triggered in future relationships by what's happened to them in their past. So some of the common effects are, as you can imagine, one of them in terms of relationship trauma or can't get over the past is a lack of trust. And there's heightened anxiety. There's fear of rejection. There's fear of being vulnerable, and there's fear of closeness. Remember, when I talk about intimacy, I don't necessarily mean a sexual relationship, but just kind of closeness, a hugging or a holding, just embracing. There can be sometimes a fear of that. So healing takes time. It's a process. So if you are you're with somebody who has had a relationship trauma, struggling to let go of the past, what you need is empathy, patience, and compassion. And the word compassion means to suffer with. So compassion is more than touchy feely and hand holding. It is some of that, but compassion is to suffer with the individual. So you go through this pain, this trauma with the individual. You don't take on the trauma, but you're with them every step of the way. You suffer with them. Some of the symptoms now, it's incredible that there's some symptoms that people can have. There can be chronic pain, headaches. People can have problems with their digestive system. And what happens, that trauma is contained in the body. It remains in the body, and it leads to stress and physical symptoms. So you would have heard me mention before about how babies, if they're in an environment where there's lots of stress, lots of violence, they can be traumatized by that, even though they can't even speak, they can't even remember, but they will feel the energy. And the best way to describe it, as adults, how many of us have walked into a room where there's been an argument? You didn't hear the argument, but you're walking, you just think, what on earth has gone on here? The vibes that's in the room, it's overpowering. Can you imagine, as an adult, you think, well, what's going on here? And a baby who can't even talk and don't have the cognitive skills to work things out, they experience that and they can't express it other than crying and perhaps sometimes being a difficult baby. So it's in public domain. So Kelly said, I was diagnosed with functional neurological disorder for these exact reasons. Yeah, you know, this whole thing about children being in safe environments is absolutely critical. And now as I'm getting older, I knew it before, but as I'm getting older and I've seen it more and more, that those early experiences have negative experiences have major repercussions on that child's life as they get older. Incredible stuff. So relationships are so when somebody experiences relationship trauma or they're not able to get through the past, there are relationship difficulties. Makes sense, doesn't it? So there's difficulties in the relationships, family, friends, and romantic. Now Clara said something else here. I ended up being unable to walk and on crutches. I had to face my childhood head on, process and grow through. Thank God I did. Yes, so seriously, sometimes the body is really complex, and sometimes you've heard me talk about the Freudian quote, unexpressed emotions never die, they are buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways. And sometimes if the trauma or the negative energy is entrapped in our bodies, emotions always are looking for expression. And if it's not there, it will find a way. It will do some form of damage to our bodies and it will find a way to express itself. And it can express itself in some real ugly ways and some of the ways in which it can impact our bodies as well. So thank you very much for that, Claire, and thank you for being so open and honest. So relationship trauma has major, so there can be then trust in the family, romantic relationships and friendship relationships suffer. So you can imagine difficulty in trust, difficulty in forming healthy relationships. So what this does then, when we have difficulties in forming healthy relationships, it can lead to feelings of isolation and loneliness. And I think I've said to you before that they've now understood that when we start feeling lonely or feeling isolated, the impact it has on our bodies is equivalent to smoking 16 cigarettes a day. And we also know now that if we are feeling isolated and lonely, we start getting sick because it affects our immune system. So this whole thing about relationships is incredibly important. That if we can start right, great. But one of the things I want to say, I'll say it from now, and I'll keep repeating myself, even though some of us may have had a bad start, there's always the possibility of a better future. Sometimes, rarely, it takes determination from an individual, but it's quite often it's a lot of internal work. And certainly, if you do the work with a therapist and the work that I've done over the years with individuals, it's really great to see them transform. But it does take time. It's not an overnight job. So you can't unhappen events, but things can become better. The journey of growth, I've just wrote down here, the journey of growth may be long and arduous, but there is a reward if we stick with it. It takes time. I've certainly, over the years, I've seen individuals in the first few sessions, they weep. I recall maybe on some occasions, it's almost the session is just full of tears. People are just grieving, crying through things that have happened to them. But if you stay with it, and many have stayed with it, they stay with it, and maybe depending on time, depending on the whatever they present, sometimes 6 months, sometimes 8 months, sometimes a year, they then emerge out of the other side. You don't see many tears. The only time then you will see tears is maybe at the very last session. They work it through. You've developed a strange relationship over a year or even longer. And so tears to start off with, working through the stuff. And then the tears will stop and they start dealing with issues. And then quite often when it's the last session, it can be very, very tearful for them because they've had an amazing experience. And now they're taking this experience into the world and having an experience in something new. So that's really important with that. So if you're with somebody and you're not too sure what's going on, you may have some suspicion. So you've met somebody there's a vibe between you and the person, you get on really well, but you just wonder, there's some things you're not sure about. So these are some of the signs, only some of the signs that your partner may be experiencing relationship trauma. There's something that's happened they can't shake from the past. Remember, you don't know them long, and sometimes because you don't know them long, or we've not been together long, you've not known that bit about them, and it takes time to trust. So one of the things you might discover that there is a real reluctance for emotional closeness. You're in the relationship, but you're kept at arm's length. The person you're with, very guarded, very defensive, and you kind of know that something's up. You can also accompany with that, there can be lots of mood swings, and there's the avoidance of intimacy, of sexual contact, and so forth. And one of the other things that people can do, I've seen it many, many times, people can actually, the relationship is good, but they self-sabotage the relationship. And they don't even know they're doing it, but they go around the relationship in a way for the relationship to end. They don't even know that they're doing it. And I just remember dating somebody years ago. I was about 18 or 19, and I was about 19, 20. And I remember we went out somewhere, and she just got into this, just wanted to have an argument. And obviously I wasn't a therapist at the time, not at 19, kind of silly young man at 19, like most of us are. And I just remember saying to her, look, I don't know what you're trying to create an argument for, but when we need to argue, we will. But until that time, let's just not do it. And I remember being very quiet about it, very gentle about it. And when I looked around, she was in tears. Just strange. In fact, we're still friends now, many, many years on. Gosh, 50 years on. 40 odd years on. Still friends. She's now abroad, but it was just strange. She was looking for an argument. And I just remembered having the wherewithal just to say, look, if we're going to have an argument, we'll argue about something that's important. Don't try to create an argument. And the next thing I knew, she was in tears. Never did kind of get to the bottom of that. But anyway, so if you are with somebody and you see some of the things I've mentioned, and you see some of these things, you say, Delroy, that's kind of what's in my relationship at the minute, or what am I to do? Well, two things you need to do is approach the person with kindness and curiosity. Some of the stuff I've been listening to recently, one of the things that's come up really popular, where they've done some research with women, what they're looking for in relationship, what comes up time and time again, it's not the car, it's not the money, it's not the house, it's not the job, not the status, not the looks, six-pack and all that type of stuff, but what comes up for women without doubt is kindness. What they want to be with a man, or if it's the same-sex relationship, they want to be with somebody who is kind. So if you're with somebody who is suffering with relationship trauma, you've kind of identified it. What you want is to be kind and to be curious. Remember, I spoke last week, curiosity is our superpower. Be curious, what's going on? Not about, so you become curious and you want to understand, not to condemn, to criticize or judge, but you want to understand. And also to remember this, your partner's past, what's happened to them is not their fault. Because remember, quite often things happen to them when they were children. So then it's about knowing that it's not their fault. And secondly, resist the urge to fix. Some of the things when we want to and I can understand why we want to fix, but resist the urge to fix. And what you need to do is offer support and encouragement. This is a relationship you kind of know. There's a friend of mine overseas, she and her partner have been together maybe 20 years. And they both said to each other, listen, we ain't going anywhere. We're going to stay with this. And they've gone through some really tough times. And they said, look, I ain't going anywhere. I ain't going anywhere. So do you know what? We can stay and just look at each other and do nothing. Or we can stay and really work at this relationship, work through these issues. And out of this mess at times, we'll have a relationship that's really rich. And we've got each other's back because we've come through some difficulties together. So healing and recovery takes time, and certainly having therapy is really helpful to work through, to help the person work through their past experiences. You're not their therapist, but you're there to support them. You've got the back, walk with them through this difficult time. Please, if you want to, good evening, Jeff. Please, if anybody wants to either a statement or comment or ask me to explain something else, please do let me know. Okay, so the impact of relationship trauma on intimacy and commitment. So there's this real thing that there's this tension. I've seen it for years that that somebody, they want to be in a relationship, but they're frightened of the closeness and intimacy. There's almost like a kind of push-pull. They want to be in a relationship, but then scared at the same time. And in the work that I do, it's about being with the individual, walking them through, but also as a therapist, certainly as a male therapist with a female client or a male client, is actually letting them know you're not going to run away, you're not going to walk off, you're going to be there, you're going to be constant, you're going to help them understand what they need to do. So intimacy and commitment are challenging for those with relationship trauma. You can imagine they've been hurt, they've been violated, they've been betrayed. Lots of damage has been done. So intimacy and commitment can be incredibly challenging for those individuals. There's this constant fear of being hurt, betrayed, rejected. It's just there all the time. And it could be that they really like you, but they're really scared in making that commitment to you. And again, you may be in that relationship. You could actually be married to somebody who the marriage is, there's a kind of, you kind of know that something isn't quite right. There's I certainly have met individuals who said they don't even know how they got children because there was such a kind of resistance for intimacy and closeness that it really kind of caused some problems. And sometimes when things happen in the relationship, it's not because the two people are bad. Quite often they just they didn't get the tools to do the work. And sometimes with some religious communities, I know that they don't look for any outside help. So the two people struggle when in fact there's knowledge and information out there that can really help people make better choices and do things differently. Better tools help you to do a better job in the relationship which they have. So folks with relationship trauma, there's a sense of lack of self-worth, low self-esteem, very low self-love, if anything, and there's a negative association with being vulnerable. And as human beings, we don't like being vulnerable. We really don't like it at all. So what we do, we build up a wall. We build up a wall to protect ourselves from being hurt, which is good in one sense. But the downside to that, and there's a huge downside to that, the downside to that is that when we block ourselves off from being hurt, we then stop ourselves from feeling joy, happiness, peace, contentment with the person or the surroundings in which we're in. So what do you do in those situations, or what do you do in those situations? There's somebody you're with who's experienced relationship trauma, you must communicate openly and with honesty about what you both need. And sometimes it can be really difficult, but it's those conversations that really helps to help the relationship mature, to bond, when we begin to talk openly and honestly. But it's scary. Because the danger, of course, is if you are open and honest, is that the person if you tell them certain things or they hear certain things, they're going to run off. And that's always a risk. There's always a risk. But if you want the relationship to grow, you have to take that risk. And if the person then goes off, you know then that person is not for you. And you also know that if things got really, really bad, you know this person won't be around. Really painful at the time, but quite often when people get through it and the dust settle and they look back on the relationship, they say, you know what, Delroy, I realize now, didn't at the time, I realize now that he or she didn't stay with me. I also realize now that if things got really, really difficult, I know that I couldn't bank on them. So as much as it hurt me at the time, I'm glad I'm in a better space now because I can see what was going on. So there's this kind of, so you're with somebody who's experiencing relational trauma. So it's about being patient with each other. You being patient with your partner and your partner then being patient with you. It's about understanding and growing. One of the things, of course, that we grow at different rates and different paces. No two of us are the same. But if you're invested, whether it be marriage or long-term relationship, you're invested to make it work. that's what's really needed. And quite often, if the person has experienced I can't want to say racial relationship trauma, is that over a period of time they will learn to trust and open up, because they see that you're there, you're not running away, you're solid as a rock. Not that their happiness is dependent on you, that's never a good thing, but they're not going to go away, they're going to stay with you. And over a period of time, you learn to trust them and begin to open up. One of the things that I have experienced, I've known couples who, when the person who had relationship trauma started to open up, the person then who's heard the story wants to go back to the family and kick the living daylights out of them, or kick the living daylights out of the previous partner. But as I've said to folks, that perhaps doesn't really be helpful, but they get really angry about how their partner has been treated, either in a past relationship or from the family. So you both embark on a journey of understanding. And it's I remember listening to somebody recently. She'd been married to the same person for 35 years, and every day she says to her husband, and it's what it's out of curiosity, not out of a joking sense. She'll say, I don't really know this person. Let me try and get to know the person a bit more. And she's been doing that for decades. And she said that each day she does that, it just reveals a little bit more of her relationship with him and so forth. So you can seek understanding, and if you're struggling with relationship trauma, a therapist may be helpful. That's something I always come back to. Relationship, a therapist may be really, really helpful, and in fact, can be helping both of you to understand. So sometimes it's not a case that there's a problem between the two. I know the couples who've come for therapy who they have different styles of communication. And sometimes the therapy is just to help each other learn new ways of understanding. Not that they're on the edge of falling out and splitting up, that type of thing, but they just want to learn how to communicate better, and they want a third person in the mix just to give them a kind of particular perspective. One of the things that therapists are really good at is it seems like it's gone out of focus for a moment. One of the things that they're really good at is that sometimes if we have particular patterns, therapists are really good at noticing the patterns and then in dialogue helping you then to think through newer relationship patterns that you can develop, either with the person you're with or the person who has the relationship trauma. So therapists can do a lot of good work. Therapists can do a lot of good work if you get to the place where you feel, look, I can't do any more than this, but I need another perspective just to kind of help me through. And sometimes you don't need much, you just need a little nudge in the right direction. And again, that reassures your partner, the person struggling with relationship difficulties, and it just helps them to understand, look, you know what, you're serious about this, you're in it, and you're not going to kind of back out. So listen, 27 minutes, I'm going to go do one more, and then we're going to finish here. Just to remember about the Eventbrite, betrayal, consequences, causes, consequences, and also recovery, how we recover from that. I think one of the things that I will say is that I think part of my sadness sometimes is that people remain in really difficult situations when in fact there's knowledge out there, there's training out there, there's information out there that can help them live better lives, more effective lives, more enjoyable lives, knowing that not everything is perfect, but sometimes the pain, the difficulties that we can cause in relationships, and there's ways of information that we can really work out very, very well that doesn't cause that can enable us to live better lives. So you're a partner with somebody who is suffering with relationship trauma. So part of the thing is about helping them through the process, helping them through the trauma. So here's some things that will be very helpful. Number one, educate yourself about the impact of racial trauma and its effects. I recall years ago, there was an elderly gentleman who his wife was going through the menopause, a Caribbean gentleman, and quite often, that's a very tricky time for women, but also it can cause lots of difficulties in the relationship. And this guy never knew about the menopause. He wasn't aware in the sense that, well, as far as he was concerned, that women just got to a certain age and they were funny. But what he did he didn't remain in his ignorance. He started to read up about it, and he took the mickey out of his peers. This guy was in his late 60s, and he read extensively about the menopause, so he knew what was happening to his wife. So one of the things that we can do is to educate ourselves about relationship trauma and its effects. If you have the knowledge, it means that it increases your understanding and you can be a better support for the person you are with. It's still difficult, but at least you understand what they're going through, and also you understand what you need to do to bring about their recovery. So I'm going to finish there. I've taken 30 minutes of your time. I think that's enough. There's lots of notes. You can always come back and watch it again. And now next week, maybe a recording, because I'm just not around. I'll just to find out if I have access to any audio visual stuff at the particular time, but I'll still be putting out content anyway. So if there's no other comments or statements, anything you'd like to add, I'm gonna bid you a good Tuesday night. Keep warm. The temperature has dropped. Incredible. On Thursday I was at a funeral and it was gorgeous weather. Absolutely gorgeous. Wednesday was horrible. Thursday was absolutely beautiful, and Friday, and then I was out, came back from somewhere Saturday night. I thought, my goodness me, where's the cold weather come from? And since then, the temperature's kind of dropping, even though during the day it's actually not too bad. But yeah, I think winter is on its way. So thank you very much indeed for your time. I wish you well. Enjoy the rest of your evening, whatever you're doing. Enjoy the rest of your week. And I'll be announcing the training more frequently now, between now and say the end of this month, just to see if we can increase the ticket sales, and for people to just to unburden themselves and learn some ways of being, in terms of leaving the betrayal in the past so you can enjoy relationships in the future. I think, as I'm finishing off now, if there's a possibility of enjoying relationships, enjoying yourself and enjoying your relationships, why continue hanging around in pain when there can be things that can help you? And it's not, in fact, it's pretty cheap. It's not expensive at all. So yeah, I wish you well and speak to you soon. And I'll see you next Tuesday at 7 o'clock. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your evening and your week, whatever you are up to. Speak to you soon. See ya. Bye.